No, it isn't possible.
A kid who's totally been watching too many action movies finds himself inside one of the movies of his idol, Jack Slater. This is an action movie that, depending on your point of view, either perfectly parodies action movies or makes a complete mockery of them.
That ain't the half of it.
It was also a film with a huge budget that found a very poor reception at the box office, much like the time I tried to buy a ticket for Mamma Mia dressed as Benny and or Bjorn.
It's a bomb!
Get out your magic movie ticket, Last Action Hero.
That's a big
mistake. That is what you were gonna say, right?
Last Action Hero is a 1993 film from John McTiernan, where, at the time, things did not go so well. But taken as a movie on its own without the stink of its initial commercial failure, and you find an interesting film. I did not like it at all at the time, but watching it again now, it's like, oh, this is not too bad. Not too good, but not too bad.
Make no mistake, they are exceptionally well trained.
It's a film with multiple personalities, where it straddles genres. I mean, some folks like turkey, duck and chicken, so they combine them into a turducken. But say you also like chocolate milkshakes, why not go one step further and have a choc-turducken milkshake? It'll make you feel sleepy, bloated and sick. It's also chock full of calcium and protein, provided of course that you can keep it all down.
Because, amigo, Leah the Fart was very, very fat.
Last Action Hero is an action film, but a mostly amusing action film. One filled with silly moments, insider gags, lots and lots of cameos, meta comments on action movies and Arnold Schwarzenegger's career.
You always said this is a movie, didn't you?
It has a cast that would make any Ocean's movie jealous. But Last Action Hero also has an element of fantasy gluing it all together, or trying to glue it all together. But of course, the most important thing, the thing that you need to remember, it has a character called Leo the Fart. And even better, Michael Kamen's score has a track called Leo the Fart. So you can stream Leo the Fart whenever and wherever you like.
Leo the Fart is gonna pass gas one more time.
Danny Madigan is a kid who spends most of his time in a rundown New York movie house watching movies, where he seems as desensitized to chronic pain and violence as Phineas Gage, and he at least had the excuse of having had a spike driven through his skull. The projectionist Nick has a magic movie ticket, which he gives to the kid, and suddenly Danny finds himself in the middle of the latest Jack Slater movie starring Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Holy cow! I'm in the movie!
Danny's not remotely freaked out by suddenly being inside a movie, and instead tries to convince Slater that this is a movie and not reality.
Look out there, this is a cartoon cat!
However, as they are in the Jack Slater film, the plot of that movie will unfold all around them.
When all I had to do is just drive around the neighborhood and point my finger at the house and say, the bad guys ain't there.
Mob boss Tony Vivaldi tortures and eventually kills Slater's favourite second cousin, while his henchman, Mr. Benedict, tries hard not to shoot his idiot boss. Oh, and Mr. Benedict is of course English and very posh, and has a glass eye. History does not record whether the glass eye was made in England or the US. I suppose it's not super important at this stage because I really don't want to get into that whole area of whether English glass eyes are better than US made glass eyes. The English glass eyes are more expensive but have legendarily bad build quality, but they roll better, while the American made glass eyes are much bigger and soggier going around corners, but yes, also have legendarily bad build quality. The Jack Slater movie plot is rather minor. Vivaldi wants to kill all the other mob bosses by bombing the funeral of another mobster, whose name of course is Leo the Fart. But Mr. Benedict seems more interested in how Danny knows so much about him. Slater leaves Danny with his daughter Meredith for a spell, and that's when Mr. Benedict and his goons show up.
Lose the guns or I redecorate in brain matter gray.
Benedict wants the magic ticket, and after killing his boss,
This is for my daughter's black eye!
crosses over into the real world, where apparently he can get away with murder that much more easily. This is an action movie, not a treatise on free will, but Mr. Benedict realizes he can do whatever the hell he likes, and he's going to use the magic ticket to travel in and out of movies.
Jack, it all makes sense. No, actually makes absolutely no sense, but I'll try to explain to you.
Slater finds being in the real world a bit of a drag. Benedict brings Slater's nemesis, Ripper, out of a previous Jack Slater movie. Then there's a big to-do at the premiere of Jack Slater 4, where Slater meets Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Look, I don't really like you, right?
Last Action Hero is a movie in pieces, some of which work really well, and others less so. It's a film that wants to break the fourth wall and comment on where action movies were in the early 90s, but rather than just have somebody look at the camera and wink at the audience, we have a kid with an encyclopedic knowledge of action film cliches who can point out all of these things to the audience.
The bad puns, the voice, the hard rock.
When Jack Slater ends up in real New York, all of a sudden his favourite action movie cliches don't apply. Slater loses some of his swagger, but discovers more of his humanity, where he's far more personable in the real world than his character in the movie spouting one-liners. Inside the action movie, genre convention tropes and cliches are examined, laughed at, and then repeated anyway with some incredibly over-the-top action.
Hi.
Trying to tie everything together, this is where the film gets a bit bogged down. Slater has to face his movie foe, the Ripper, on a rooftop, and then Mr. Benedict, and then thankfully it's all over. There's the fantasy element where the kid who loves movies gets the magic ticket to enter his beloved films.
Who the hell are you?
Don't shoot me. I'm Danny Madigan. I'm a kid.
This is by far the weakest part of the movie, because it's just a plot mechanism to get people in and out of movies. I mean, Tron does something similar, it does it better, and did it a decade earlier. The movie within the movie part, which at the time was considered by many to be the film's Achilles heel, is funnily enough the bit that I've enjoyed the most, where it seems to be channeling a Naked Gun Light style parody of action films, which was denied by one of the film's writers, Shane Black. But Last Action Hero is one of the few parody movies with a budget at least equal to the films that it was making fun of. Last Action Hero was not a well-loved film at the time of release, but only some of that can be attributed to the film's problems. Yes, the film does have problems, but there was also the perception, because people smelled blood in the water before the film's release.
The fart goes off in 7 minutes.
Columbia Pictures had been bought by Sony a few years earlier, and after the purchase, threw around some money to cover Columbia's debt, settle a few outstanding legal matters, and attract some high-profile executives who, of course, wanted to make a splash in their new roles. By roles I meant jobs, not that they wanted to drunkenly drive their new Rolls Royce off the end of Santa Monica Pier. Meanwhile, two aspiring screenwriters, Zach Penn and Adam Leff, weren't having much luck selling scripts, and after analysing the market, set about creating something that they thought would sell. Their pitch was basically the Last Action Hero concept, which at the time they called extremely violent. Their ploy worked and the film was sold to Columbia. Leff would write a few more films, while Zach Penn has his print ink over several superhero movies, as well as crossover type movies Ready Player One and Free Guy.
Meet your new partner.
Oh no.
Penn and Leff had written their script with Schwarzenegger in mind, but when Columbia bought Extremely Violent, the new regime thought that with the right star, this could be a big one.
I'm the famous comedian Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Schwarzenegger.
Gesundheit.
Other actors were considered, but nobody really thought that anybody could pull this off as well as the ample Austrian. Schwarzenegger was wooed with a big payday, a star director in the form of Die Hard director John McTiernan, and script rewrites from more writers, including Lethal Weapon scriptwriter Shane Black, who brought in his friend David Arnott. There were also uncredited polishers from the likes of William Goldman and Carrie Fisher. Yes, that Carrie Fisher.
If God was a villain, he'd be me.
Last Action Hero was launched into a compressed production schedule after the studio announced, with much gusto, a release date of June 1993. Shooting proceeded without all that much drama, though post-production was on an incredibly tight schedule. I dig. In my dreams, I once had to edit a film for Peter Jackson, and we were running out of time, so we just had to release the film without even touching the final reel. The movie still won Best Picture at the Academy Awards. And then I woke up at the cinema, and Frodo was still there saying goodbye.
To be or not to be.
There were doubts about the film's quality along the way, but people in general kept their own counsel, because nobody really wanted to tell Arnie that the film wasn't quite there. At the studio, spirits were high, leading to an overabundance of either confidence, hubris, or cocaine, or, as seems possible, a combination of all three called conhubricane.
Don't give up your day job.
Last Action Hero was going to be a huge hit, regardless of whether or not it was any good. Firstly, there'd be a massive marketing campaign based on the fact that it's an Arnold film. Since Terminator 2's release in 1991, he'd been a little quiet on the acting front with just a few small appearances, where he also directed a Christmas movie for television.
I'll be back. Ha! You did not gonna say that, did you?
There did seem to be an appetite for another film with Arnold shooting up the place. And secondly, there was willing the film to succeed. So rather than lock down a great script full of wit and vigour, studio executives instead push their brains to the edge of aneurysms by trying to use their mind to transmit success vibes to moviegoers. Unfortunately, success vibes have to date not been approved by the FCC, but give it time. The success vibes did jack shit, and the marketing campaign came off as incredibly obnoxious, like a used car salesman like a used car salesman.
But don't plug the restaurants. I just hate it when you plug the restaurants or the gyms. It's so tacky.
An early rough cut was test screened and the feedback was not good, as in pointing a microphone at its own speaker, not good. The studio tried to pretend that the test screening never happened, where they swept it under the rug like Uncle Earl's ashes after the unfortunate incident at the Tupperware party.
I hate when that happens.
A war with the LA Times over articles digging into the film's troubled production merely drew attention to the film's problems. Reshoots tried to fix minor problems and make the story flow a little better. However, reshoots could not fix the fact that this was a film with the words last, action, and hero on the cover of the script.
Here's the Lieutenant Governor! Later, here's what I...
When the governor gets here, call me.
When the film was finally released, there had been so much bad publicity that it would make it really hard for anything but a really good film to lose the bad reputation.
No more movies!
Last Action Hero turned out to be a film that not many people saw it and thought, well, that was much better than I was expecting. When this showed up at the video library, I rented it. I don't even think I finished watching the movie. I just did not like it at the time. It's fun enough most of the time. It's not remotely close to a terrible 90s action movie, but it is also nothing special. It's all over the place in terms of tone and humour. The plot is held together with old rubber bands that have been left out in the hot sun for a year, and the magic ticket teases us with the idea of bringing characters from any movie, and then does almost nothing with it.
He's a good man. A flatulent man.
Arnold Schwarzenegger is clearly having a ball making fun of both his films and his reputation.
No one finds this a little convenient?
Newcomer Austin O'Brien gets the thankless role of the annoying kid who knows absolutely everything about these shitty movies, but Danny's also a psychopath, unfazed by death and mayhem going on around him. At no point does Danny ever piss himself when somebody starts shooting at him. The kid who's the poster boy for parents paying attention to the ratings of the films that their kids watch. Charles Dance is the villain with a twinkle in his eye, well, at least one of them. I have the feeling that Charles Dance is quite happy with never being cast as a hero in American productions, since he's making a potentially hateable character quite appealing. Oh, and I guess the money's not bad.
But if you do this right, the world is your oyster.
Mercedes Rule as Danny's mother, where I'm fairly sure that she and Jack Slater were making out in the kitchen before Danny woke up. Robert Prosky was Nick the projectionist, who in earlier drafts of the script was in fact the film's devilish villain before Mr. Benedict was promoted.
You better get down the beach, go down the beach!
Frank McRae does the ultimate angry police lieutenant shouting at his staff. Bridget Wilson was Slater's daughter Meredith. Anthony Quinn was Tony Vivaldi. Joan Plowright was Danny's teacher, who shows the class Laurence Olivier, where of course Plowright was Olivier's widow. Tom Noonan was Ripper and himself, Art Carney as Slater's second favourite cousin, and F. Murray Abraham played a friend of Jack's who betrays him. Abraham's role as Salieri and Amadeus was riffed on throughout the movie.
You said you killed Mozart. Oh, who? Zod.
Sir Ian McKellen briefly played Death, and then there are many small cameos, including Schwarzenegger's then-wife Maria Shriver, Sharon Stone, Robert Patrick, Danny DeVito, Tina Turner, and, because I can't be arsed listing all of them, many more. A lot of these cameos are just thrown away like a used lottery ticket. Blink and you'll miss them. But if you add them up, I think there's something like 4 Academy Award winners and multiple nominees appearing in a film that would instead go home empty-handed at that year's Razzies.
No one likes a smart ass.
By the time Last Action Hero came out, most of the guest cast had valid excuses why they couldn't attend the premiere, usually along the lines of a scheduling conflict where, there was a Wings rerun. When Last Action Hero finally opened, film critics weren't particularly positive and audiences were lukewarm on the movie. You could go and see Last Action Hero, or you could go and see this other film that opened a week earlier, Jurassic Park. Despite Columbia's hopes for Last Action Hero, Jurassic Park was the runaway hit of the year, and Last Action Hero became a movie that people would say, oh yeah, they made that, I heard it wasn't very good. Last Action Hero did make over $130 million at the box office, which is a mind-boggling number that at first seems impressive, but then you realise that Last Action Hero cost at least that much to make and market, so that's a box office number that indicates a huge flop. A bomb even bigger than the one implanted into the corpse of Leo the Fart. the spectre of Hudson Hawk loomed large, which at the time was considered a notorious example of a star huffing their own post-bean stew emissions. Last Action Hero makes the overindulgence on that film look like the guy who was rescued after being lost in the desert for a week without food or water and asks the guy in the helicopter, "So thirsty, do you have sparkling water?" But like Hudson Hawk, Last Action Hero would, over time, find an appreciative audience. I liked the movie's ridiculousness, but I liked less the scenes in New York and still find the magic ticket to be a MacGuffin that belongs in the Rosebud Museum.
We killed less people in this movie. This movie, we only killed 48 people, and compared to the last one where we killed 119.
Schwarzenegger had made hard R action movies full of violence and swearing, but he'd also had success with a few comedies aimed at more general audiences.
You can't possibly say it, because this movie is PG-13.
Last Action Hero tried to appeal to fans of both types of films, but in the end it seems a mix that nobody was all that pleased with.
Look at the elbow of my jacket. What is it doing?
Wearing thin?
Last Action Hero was a film that was hoped to be a big smash, but instead it turned into the opposite of a big smash, which as it turns out is shams. Over time it found some fans who might just be desperate for a 90s action movie that they haven't already seen 100 times.
He's okay. Minor wound. Both cops dead.
So it's not as bad as its reputation would suggest, and not as good as its pedigree would demand. In the end, Last Action Hero is watchably meh.
I'm worried that you're right.
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Two days to retirement.